Ask the Coach 9 with Nick Sellers. How you doing, Nick?
Great, thank you. Thanks for asking. All is well.
Fantastic. Nick, we recently released a report on AI adoption in Scottish finance based on insights from 100 finance leaders. The report reveals that while we're still in the early stages of AI adoption, the potential impacts are significant and look like they're only going to grow. So in a recent talk I attended on AI, the chap quoted a phrase by Henry Ford, the chap who made Ford Motors. He said, Henry Ford had said at the time, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, not cars, of course. And it struck me that we're in a very similar situation with AI at the moment. No one knows exactly where it's going, but I think it would be unwise to be blind to it and ignore its potentials. What's your thoughts on AI and where do you think we're heading?
I, I I agree with you. I don't think we can ignore AI. I think it's something we should keep an eye on, whoever we are, in whichever way it can be used. Um, I I'm going to choose my words carefully because I think AI can be a terrific help for anybody in the workplace. It can help them in their careers. It can help them in their business. It can help them in developing marketing content in so many different ways. AI can help. Um, I was pretty involved in some aspects of AI at a previous role that I fulfilled, and the way I would liken it is this. I'm not sure that to call it artificial intelligence is exactly the right phrase, but what AI is really good at is taking the whole ocean of content that is out there and boiling it down into something that you can use. So I'm not sure that AI is creating intelligence. What I think it's doing is it's taking the sum total of available human intelligence in the form of all the content on the internet, and it's boiling it down and summarizing it nicely for you. That's kind of ways that I've seen it used. Um, in the customer service environment I used to work in, AI was actually working alongside people that were dealing with customers, and it was listening to the conversation, and then it was going away and actually finding answers that could be useful for the agent to use when dealing with customers. So AI, terrifically powerful, amazing capabilities. I wouldn't worry too much about it sort of like overtaking human beings. But I would say that in terms of being able to boil that ocean of content down, it can certainly do that, and very quickly, much more quickly than a human being could. But whether it's ever going to be as creative or more insightful than a human brain, I'm not sure. I don't think so. At least not for a
Definitely.
while.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to know. I mean, I think to your point, the main application is that I can see in the short term or short to medium term is it can condense huge amounts of information and put those information almost like the internet but with added intelligence at the fingertips of professionals.
Yeah.
So my wife's a solicitor and she has been looking into AI in depth for her firm and essentially I think the way that they're going to deploy it over the next few years is they'll have a tool, a desktop tool at the fingertips of lawyers where they can ask the AI to
Yeah.
refer to case law and it will immediately spit back real-time examples depending on how it's queried. I think
Yeah.
it'll be very similar for accountants, for the tax professionals, that they'll be able to query the AI and the AI will draw from huge pools of data and give them those queries with added insight potentially at their
Yeah.
fingertips, and gone are the days of having to go and refer to a manual somewhere or an archive. It'll all be there at their fingertips.
Yeah.
Um, just leading on from that, then, do you see AI being a threat to potential jobs and industries in the short to medium term?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it will. I think what AI is already doing is it's starting to take away some of the mundane tasks. It's starting to deal with, if you think about it, when programmers used to program computers, they were having to give very specific terms through the software, they were actually saying, if this, then that. And it was kind of like developing a formula, if you will, that if the criteria of the formula were met, just like you do in Excel. If the criteria of the formula were met, then actually here's the outcome of that. Where AI is at, and I'm definitely not an expert, there are going to be people who will have much more detailed insights than I have. Where AI is now scoring is that it doesn't have to be quite so well defined, that actually it's able to read text and actually draw out from that text a summary, which is a well-written summary. It's not just looking for keywords, it's actually summarizing something that could be a transcript of an hour-long conversation and giving you the 10 takeaways from that conversation. It could be that AI is going to go look at, the entire books of a company and actually flag up to the potential investor areas that there might be concerns about how the money's moving. So AI goes beyond just the kind of the conventional computer search terms and things like that. It's much more powerful.
Absolutely. I agree. It's probably the wrong term, but again, I'm not an expert, but it seems to have an intuition. Of course, it doesn't have an intuition, but I know what you're saying. It does feel like that. It's more intelligent in the way that it understands the queries. Where I see it going, Nick, is I do think there is a threat that organisations won't need the same manpower or workforce to deliver a service. I think it's, going back to maybe pre-industrial revolution where farmers would have lots of labourers out working in the fields, and then they got horses, then they got combine harvesters, for example, and that's then gone from a farm needing hundreds of people to run that farm to the farmer and a few staff who all have vehicles. And I do feel that that's coming, unfortunately, within, and it's happened over the years regardless, but I do feel that's coming within a lot of industries. Almost every industry, it just won't need the same number of staff to deliver it. And I think people need to be wary of that to some extent and future-proof their career, which is tricky because none of us can see into the future. But do you have any advice for people who are looking forward and saying, this could threaten my position? And
You've made a really well-made point, and I hope it didn't sound like I was disagreeing earlier. I think that AI is changing things. It will change things. It's dealing right now with the kind of the mundane tasks and stuff like that, but it is actually also providing insights into things because of the power of the technology and being able to summarize. But to the point where jobs are affected, if you're somebody that's in a job where it's repetitive tasks that you're doing, something that AI can take over, maybe you should go and retrain as somebody that is a prompts engineer for AI. So you might become the person who actually knows how to pose the question of ChatGPT, actually to how to go ask the question that will give you that summary that you're looking for. Maybe you want to go retrain so that instead of being a, mundane task person, you become a question asker person, and you're asking the software, you're asking the platform. You see where I'm going with that? So, just in the same way, you mentioned agriculture there, and maybe you were the guy that looked after the horses, and then tractors and combine harvesters came along. Maybe even though you love horses, you might go retrain as an engineer that can keep the tractors and the combine harvesters moving.
Absolutely, that's a really good point, Nick. I think the difference with the speed of change, and I think people do need to be wary of this. I think a lot of it will need to be driven by professionals themselves if they don't want to get left behind.
Yeah,
I don't think there's not, and this is not me thinking this. This is from the report. There's not a huge investment going into upskilling professionals in this area. So I do think it's an area that professionals themselves really need to engage in. It may not come to where we think it may go, and that's the difficulty. It may not prove that fruitful, the investment in time and effort and upskilling in this area. But I think it would be quite dangerous not to, because it could just evolve that quickly that you get left behind if you don't have the skill set.
Yeah, the use of AI is no doubt going to grow. As it becomes better at what it does, as its scope grows, it's gonna, like tentacles, they're gonna kind of start reaching out into so many different areas of the workplace. And it brings benefits with it for sure, otherwise it wouldn't grow. But it does bring those threats. And for anybody at any level, understanding what AI is, a little bit of maybe understanding how it does what it does, and a lot of understanding of how you can use it are really important things to undertake. So, whatever level somebody is at in a business, they can take a look at AI and actually figure out how they can use it, how the business can benefit from it, and also kind of do that cost benefit analysis as well. It may be that the AI in a particular use case, it's just going to cost too much just now.
Yep.
But over time, it could be that the cost drops or that the benefit grows. And there's going to come a point in time at which then you can kind of flip the switch and move in a different direction. For companies that employ people, maybe some of those folks that are doing the kind of repetitive, mundane tasks, maybe they can start retraining them now, even though the AI isn't there. Maybe they can actually start upskilling them a bit for the moment when that becomes a reality. For those senior people that are maybe not going to be threatened directly by AI, maybe they can be looking at how AI can be used in the business to their benefit, to the benefit of clients.
Definitely. I think brilliant points, Nick. I think what I can see it going in professional services is that instead of an organisation having 1,000 staff, uh, within the professional services model, typically
Yeah.
you've got a lot of fairly junior staff delivering transactional services. I do think those transactional services could disappear fairly quickly and be taken by AI or parallel technologies. And instead of having, say, 1,000 staff deliver a service, you may have 10 experts essentially analysing what's coming back from the AI and
Right.
verifying it. So you'll always, I believe, have some human oversight. Who knows? But you feel there will be some human oversight for a long time, but it may just be that work at a more junior level is not being delivered by people. It's being delivered by computers, which happens anyway, but I think it could accelerate to a greater extent.
And this has ever been the case. You think back on the Industrial Revolution that took place. Up until then, it was kind of local crafts that were being used. The Industrial Revolution came along and things started coming off production lines. And those production lines, because they were efficient, were able to produce good enough quality items at a lower cost. And we've all become very used to that kind of supply chain production line stuff that feeds us with what we buy. And we're very used to that. This is taking it to another level. This is actually now starting to use artificial intelligence to take away a part of the mundaneness of work life and start to deal with information in a way that, humanly speaking, we might struggle to cover so much ground in such a short space of time, or maybe to actually dig deep enough, fast enough to actually come out with an insight. But
Yeah.
it's there to be used. It's not there to be seen purely as a threat. It could be a benefit. It may be that 100 people are no longer needed in the transactional sense, but maybe there's 10 people, as you mentioned, there's 10 people who now are highly skilled that are needed to be able to achieve what a business needs to achieve. We could look at it in a very negative way and say that's 990, I've lost track of the numbers, 100 people. That's 90 people that are kind of now no longer needed. But it could be that those 10 people are actually not 10 full-time employees. They might be 10 part-time employees, or rather 10 FTEs. So we've got 10 people, but actually that role's being fulfilled by 100 people who are working 10% of their day on this particular thing, and they're going off and doing other things with their life to have that kind of portfolio career. I don't know, I'm rambling a bit, but you get where I'm going. Things are changing.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there, Nick. One thing I do think will happen, and I may be completely wrong here, but if I was to take an educated guess of the next 20 years, I think big organisations and big corporations are going to disappear to some extent. I think the role of an employee is going to change very much. And I think it could be positive. I think you mentioned there people could be doing lots of different gigs. I think in the future, AI and the technological advancements, and also not just that, but also the appetite of young people coming through into the workforce. They don't necessarily want that 9 to 5, Monday to Friday full time job where it takes them 20 years to work up the career ladder. They
Right.
don't necessarily need it because they've got new skill sets, that they've got as much experience in as anybody. And I think we could see over the next 20 years, maybe sooner, the kind of breakdown of companies as we know it, and companies will become a lot smaller, more agile, and will deliver
And
a
that,
bigger
I
range of
think
services.
you make an important point there that the business landscape, societal landscape is all changing. You know, it's not like things are fixed at a moment in time and then stay the same forever. Things do change and evolve. You know, I remember the days before we had email and so forth. You know, I remember days when to communicate with somebody over a long distance was either a letter in the mail or a very expensive phone call, because calls used to be expensive. Now you can speak to somebody on the other side of the world through WhatsApp and it costs you nothing except your internet connection. So, you know, things have changed a lot in the last 30 or 40 years already, and more change is coming. So you're right. It's going to be that people want to work in a different way. The technology enables things to be done differently. And, you know, businesses need to take a real long, hard look at that and figure out how they want to use it and what their clients and customers want from them as well. Because no business will survive without clients and customers that actually want to buy from them, whether it's products or services.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was reading a quote recently by, I think it was the chap who he founded Walmart, and he said to the staff, there was a poster on the wall saying, "We don't pay your wages, the customers do," and that's 100% to your point, like 100% true. It's what the customers want, and
Right.
ultimately what they demand that will dictate where this all goes. I think. Um, is there from your experience, Nick? Do you currently use any AI or any tools related to AI in your day to day professional life?
I do. So I use ChatGPT a bit. Don't use it extensively, but I do find, say for example, if I'm going to be running a webinar, I would probably go to ChatGPT and say, I'm running a webinar on this topic. It's going to be 30 minutes long. This is who the audience is. Give me 10 possible titles I could use. And it'll just come back in a moment with 10 options as to how I might word it. I don't have to accept those 10, but I might actually maybe amalgamate two of them together. So it's still my output, but I got a bit of help. It's a bit like, you know, talking to a colleague at work and saying to them, I've got to do a presentation on this topic. Have you got any thoughts about what kind of titles I could use? It's just that I'm asking the machine rather than asking a person. And similarly, if you want to know, if you want an article 500 words, give ChatGPT some ideas, and it will give you 500 words on that topic. But I would say don't just copy and paste those 500 words and publish it as your own article, because the machine has given you something which is very I'm going to say it's characterless, but what the machine's given you is something that you can use and you can actually go shape that, make it your own, and then publish. So that's kind of how I'm using AI. As I say, I don't use it a lot, but I do use it. I play around with it.
Yeah, yeah. The generative AI seems it's fairly good, and I use it the same way, Nick. Just to I'll put in something I've written and say, could you check the grammar, for
Yeah.
example, and likewise, can you give me an idea or a title? And I think it's very useful in that sense. It'd be interesting to see the next iteration of it and where it goes. Um, some of the other tools I use say they're AI based, but I struggle to see where the AI comes in. I'm sure there is an underlying AI
Yeah.
in the background with some of the software, but I do think on the flip side, it is a kind of buzzword where stick AI in the product and it'll sell better or raise more investment. I definitely see a bit of that, and
Yeah.
it's hard to sometimes differentiate where it's actual AI and just conventional methods.
Everything comes with AI now. You know, you buy a phone, you buy a smartwatch, you buy a car, whatever you're buying. If everybody's jumping on the AI bandwagon. You know that this comes with AI, and I'm not knocking the features, the benefits that they bring, or anything like that. But I think we do kind of have to kind of take some of the marketing speak with a bit of a pinch of salt, because it's coming with some really smart features, but not necessarily could you really call it AI. So maybe I'm cynical, but
Yeah,
I do
speaking
think that it's a marketing thing.
I agree, Nick. I think a lot of it is. I was speaking to someone who would be considered an expert in this field recently, and they said you do have to be careful because the big players in the market are so heavily invested in AI. Your Microsoft, your
Yeah,
Google, those
yeah,
organizations have pumped so much money into it because they have to. They can't afford not to. They could make the business obsolete very quickly. So they're very vested in it working. So you do have to be careful that what you're being presented and sold and told is great. Is that to our benefit and our advantage, or is that to the advantage of the big players in the tech market? And I think there will be because given the astronomical levels of investment in this field, there will be a big driver for it to come to fruition, whether it's to our benefit or not.
yeah. You raise a really interesting point there, and for anybody that listens to this, there's no such thing as a free lunch, okay?
Mm.
Um, and I would say be very, very careful. It's a bit like Alexa. Amazon has Alexa, and you can talk to Alexa and say, Alexa, tell me what the weather forecast is. And that's great. Alexa goes away and brings it to you and tells you what the weather forecast is. But in order to do that, Alexa has to listen to what's going on in your room. And I'm going back again to the days in customer service when we had people working from home. We had to insist that Alexa and other similar devices were unplugged and removed from the room when we had agents talking to customers, because there was a risk that personal sensitive information was being listened to by a machine and recorded. And it's the same for us, that when we're interacting with ChatGPT, we're asking the question, but the machine's remembering all of that. And, do you want somebody to have another listen to your conversation with ChatGPT or with Alexa? Do you want somebody else to have access? Now, they can build safeguards in, but we need to be aware that there are certain risks. If you're doing something that's nefarious, do you really want the police to be able to get a subpoena or a court order and go and insist that the record of what you said is retrieved and available to them to take you to court?
It's a good point. I wonder if there's been any convictions yet based on the conversation somebody's had with generative AI, or if there's not, I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah.
Definitely. Has there been any? You mentioned emails, obviously. Like, has there been any technological advancements that have completely caught you off guard during your career, and or that have made major waves in your role or within industries you've worked in?
Not so much caught me off guard, but I think technology, I love technology. I'm kind of geeky that way. I'll always go and, whatever the new thing is, I'll go check it out and understand what it does. I may not embrace it straight away, but I'm always interested in possibilities. How could I use this new device? How could I use this new software and so forth? So not caught me off guard for sure, but certainly has impressed me. Certainly has given me food for thought, and I just treat it. I think last week when we spoke, I mentioned the word curiosity, and I'm a kind of curious person. I do ask a lot of questions. That's why I'm a coach. Maybe that I want to know what the answer is, or I want to know if you know what the answer is. So curiosity is something AI, I'm curious about it still. I can see possibilities. I'm not frightened of AI, and at the moment, I'm not too worried that AI is going to steal away, the need for human interaction and the need for human insight. Sorry, I
Great.
don't think I really answered your question there, but I tried.
I remember when I was a kid, I think it was Back to the Future came out, and people, you kind of took it for granted that people would be going about on hoverboards and they'd be flying cars. And by the time it got to 2020, if you projected it, from 1990 to 2020,
Yeah.
there'd be people talking about flying cars, and you know, we were going to the moon on holiday, ridiculous things. And I think the one of our lifetime, and I'm not close enough to it to fully understand, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people who disagree with me, but driverless cars have been on the horizon for a long, long time. The fact is, I don't see anybody going around anywhere in a driverless car at the moment, and they may come in very quickly, but they may just also not feasibly be commercial, or it's very difficult to know. And I feel like that with AI, there's huge potential, but is it really going to come in to the extent that Google or Microsoft are the big players in the field would have you believe? And I will be interested to see how things go. What's your, just to ask you, look 5-10 years in the future, Nick, what's your vision of where we could be in 10 years time?
In relation to AI, in relation to technology, I think there'll be a lot more options available. I mean, we're already seeing it with companies like Amazon kind of doing drone deliveries instead of, a guy in a van dropping a parcel off at a house. I think that kind of thing will grow, will spread. I question whether there's a real need for it. I think sometimes we're actually intrigued by it, and so we use it. Um, where do I think it's going to be in 5 or 10 years from now? I actually think people will be a lot more comfortable with just using AI in many different ways. Maybe the AI is going to be able to interact more naturally, vocally with us, that we have a conversation with it rather than give it a command and then get a text response from it, that kind of thing. You mentioned there, we think about programs, Star Trek, they had the communicator, they had the phasers that were all used when I was a kid, actually.
Mhm.
And some of these have become like reality. The smartphone, laser guns are real. They can use lasers now. So there are some aspects of science fiction that are achievable. And who's to say, yeah, back in the Star Trek days, they had computers that talked to you and had a conversation with you. And who's to say that we don't start to have that happening in the house um, more naturally?
Yeah, I thought a really interesting one, Nick, is so my wife's been doing a lot of research into this, and she's been engaging with some experts in the field, and one of the experts told her that there's a good chance within 10 years that a high proportion of people will have an emotional attachment to an AI companion. So, on a level of a friend, a partner, a romantic partner,
Yeah.
and it's quite scary to think in 10 years. And I don't know. Some part of me thinks it's a good thing because it may give people comfort if they're lonely. But then it's a bit horrible to think that society's got to the place where, if society gets to that place where, I've heard that there were real use cases to bring in AI robots. I don't know how they look into nursing homes, for example, to give interaction to
Yeah.
elderly people in a nursing home. And part of me thinks, okay, it could be good, but really, it's part of me says as well, we've got to draw the line somewhere, and really, we can't have robots doing things that fundamentally a human. It should be a human-to-human interaction.
Yeah. Remember that when a robot is used, when AI is used, it's actually copying people. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure of that. It's a good thing. If you went back many years, it was quite natural that one generation would look after the next generation children. But actually, as parents got older, then actually the children would start to look after their parents. And so now, we might talk about older folks going into care homes where other human beings, not family, look after them. But if we start to automate all of that and we use robots to actually do that, is that really caring for the elderly, or is that other generations kind of delegating or subcontracting their responsibilities?
Exactly.
Will we get to the point where when a baby's born, actually it's a robot that's looking after the baby? Would we do that? I'm kind of getting crazy with my thinking there, but I do wonder whether actually this breakdown in human interaction, human conversation, engagement is actually going to start to reveal worse problems, because we lose the ability to do that.
I agree, Nick. I don't know if we can discuss in such a short period, but I agree there's all sorts of potentially nefarious uses for AI, and they may not immediately appear nefarious, but I agree for a robot essentially to care for a baby, it's not right. But again, maybe in 50 years it'll just be acceptable because people will become used to it. But will that be to society's advantage, or the manufacturers of the robot? And I would suspect it's more going to be driven by the people who are developing the AI, and these solutions, because they'll be profitable, and someone will make a lot of money, but they're maybe not the right solutions for humans. They're the right solutions for the people who are going to make money from them. It's a very
Yeah.
difficult one.
I think there are some people that work on innovations because their mind is driven towards being able to achieve something, do something. There'll be others that are drawn to innovation because of the profit they can make from it, and so forth. And there are others that are drawn to innovation maybe because of some of the harm that they can cause by it. So, yeah, I think you're right. We probably need to be careful that we don't get drawn off into areas of too much speculation. But I think the reality of humanity is that something that was developed for good can be used for evil, and we need to be really careful that we're aware of the possibilities.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, Nick. I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's one with more questions than answers, I think, and it'll be interesting to see where everything goes over the next few years.
Mm.
But just to finish up, what was your last? A lot of people are, well, in the survey, in the report we've just recently taken, 69% of finance leaders are actively researching and engaging with AI or
Yeah.
prospecting AI. 31% aren't, so they're not actively engaging with AI. So what's your advice to the 31%? Should they wait and see, or should they be actively engaging with these technologies,
Oh,
or at least
I,
researching them?
I think they have to go take a look at it. And the reason I say that is because it may not yet be ready for their needs. It may not be ready for the needs of their clients. But understanding where it's at, understanding what the likely timescale is going to stop the business being kind of just left out of the race altogether. So I think that 31% would do well to actually go and take a look at AI, take a look at how it could be used, how it could be useful. And, but without committing a lot of money to it, they can go and check it out. They can have conversations. They can figure it out, and maybe even find some that have tried it and not got what they thought they were going to get from it, and therefore have parked it for a little while, as well as talking to people who got exactly what they were looking for from it, and can report some kind of benefit. But just kind of not being aware of it just isn't an answer, really.
I agree. Great advice, Nick. I think it goes back to a conversation we had last week around retaining curiosity at all stages of your career.
Right. Yeah. I think all of us be prepared to learn your whole life, remain curious, remain interested, and look for opportunities to try and do things a different way to improve what you do. It's not just a factor of age and ability. I think it's part of that demeanor that we sometimes talk about, that we've got our eyes open, we've got a sparkle in those eyes, and we've got energy to keep looking forward.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Fantastic, Nick. Been very insightful and interesting as always. And hopefully you'll join me again next week.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Andrew. It's been good talking to you.
You too. Thanks, Nick.
Bye bye.